Today's first reading from the book of Leviticus gives just a few of the horrible rules established by the Mosaic community to protect itself from leprosy. In ancient times, leprosy was believed to be deforming, incurable, and contagious. Leprosy includes most skin disorders. Lepers were ostracized by their families and neighbors and forced to live outside of their villages and towns. They were treated as outcasts and untouchables. They were referred to as the living dead. As today's reading says, they had to cover their mouths with one hand and call out, "Unclean, unclean," as they walked. Anyone who come into any contact whatsoever with a leper was unclean like the leper. And Jesus, moved with pity, stretched out his hand, touched the leper, and said to him, "Be made clean." Jesus did not see the unclean leper or his disease. He saw a human soul in desperate need. Jesus crosses social and religious boundaries to cure the leper. At the heart of the encounter, compassion moves Jesus not only to respond with a word of encouragement, but also to reach out and touch him. This gesture, touching the untouchable, spoke more eloquently than any words could and brought spiritual as well as physical healing to this unfortunate man. Today's gospel reminds us that touch is one of our most fundamental human needs. To be touched and to be able to touch is at the very core of what it means to be human. Far more than words, touch conveys concern, empathy, support, and affirmation. Many of us are afraid to touch others. We give a few pennies to a beggar, but made sure that there is no contact between us, even eye contact. Jesus didn't stand off or keep his distance. He wasn't afraid to touch lepers or others. He touched the lepers, the sinners, sick people, and even the dead. Physical contact is precisely what gives people, especially sick and wounded people, a sense of warmth and joy. By the very act of touching another person, we accept that person as the way he or she is. In the second reading, Paul challenges us to imitate Christ. We are to be ministers of healing. We are to touch not just the physically sick, but all those whose lives are hurting and need a healing in any way possible. How about those who are spiritually sick? How about those who have left the church, left Christianity? Those who have left Christian society are always welcomed back into the society when they seek to return. Is there ever a situation where there is no longer any possibility of healing, of mercy, of extending the hand of Christ to those who seek reconciliation? Not in Christianity. The forgiving Father might not have been able to give his prodigal son the remainder of the farm that belonged to the elder brother. But he was able to welcome the prodigal son back into the family. The person who has hurt his or her spouse and children may or may not be able to resume his or her place in the marriage, but that person still can receive blessings, forgiveness, the healing that he or she longs for. When Jesus faced the troubled, they abandoned the sick, the blind, and today, when face to face with a leper, Jesus was moved not by disgust, but by compassion and love. Having compassion and showing mercy are the Christian qualities of our great minds and great hearts. The poor man in today's gospel passage must have felt deep isolation, a kind of hopeless situation, and an alienation from all the people around him. Does that sound familiar? Today, many people find themselves in a somewhat similar situation. They are isolated and alone, cocooning, shielding, or just fearful of coming out, self-imposed or not, locked down, locked in. We can learn from the poor man in the gospel who kneels before Jesus and says, if you really want to heal me, you can. And Jesus, what does he do? Of course, I want to heal you. Oscar Wilde wrote about Jesus, and he says, Jesus understood leprosy of the leper, the darkness of the blind, the fierce misery of those who live in pleasure, and the strange poverty of the rich. Jesus stretches our capacity for compassion and love. He challenges our idea of what is true love that could enkindle new hope. We possess the wonderful capacity to be instruments of the healing power of Christ. There are always people among us waiting to be touched by our compassionate presence. Let that healing touch begin with us today. Let our prayer be, Lord, give us a warm heart and kind hands to reach out and touch those who need our healing. Amen.